All right. What is going on, everybody? If you don't know, now you do know. You're officially tuned in to a very special edition of the HFWB podcast series. This is your host, Clifton Pope, and with me today, I have a special individual who has quickly become a friend as we were conversating before we decided to go on live. And the reason why is because I finally found someone who really does understand the struggle of being a self-published author or just an author in general and just exploring the world of writing because it's crazy because the person who I'm about to bring on, I mean, ironically enough, she does have a master's in creative writing. I mean, she's written for like the Ben Business, the literary magazine, The Sage. I mean, she's done graphic designs for basically every news station in Corpus Christi, Texas, from Action 10, Chris 6, if I'm not mistaken correctly. She even did a little bit of digital media coordinating for KIII. So it's like she has her hands in so many things, and now to transfer it into writing, it's like, oh my goodness, you cannot go wrong with that. And the reason why I bring it up, if you don't know who I'm talking about, she does have a book that's on pre-order status that at one point was number one on Amazon in her category that she's writing about. When Oceans Rise, just remember that title, and remember this name I'm about to introduce as well, the lovely Miss Robin Alvarez. Welcome aboard the HFWB podcast series. How's it going, Robin?
It's so great, and thank you for having me, Clifton. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for making time out of your busy schedule just to come on board to the HFWB podcast series. And for everybody who's listening, actually, Robin, who wants to know more about who you are as, of course, a woman, an individual, how would you best describe your story?
Well, are you talking about my writing origin story or me as a person?
Give us both sides. That way we
Sure.
can give everybody who's listening to the HFWB podcast series the whole story. We're not leaving
Sure.
anything out here, Robin.
Well, I am a YA contemporary fantasy author, so I always write in the modern world as if it were magical. I write a lot about identity because I am mixed race, biracial. So there will be a lot of stuff from like my Filipino heritage, but also from like my Irish side too. Um, and
Oh, wow.
yeah, so this first book that I've written is about a mixed race character who kind of doesn't identify with either side of her heritages because there's so much pressure to be fully one or the other and not quite feel like you belong to either side. So there's a little bit of
Right.
that undercurrent in addition to the struggles that she's going to because she's like trapped in an abusive relationship and wanting to escape and not knowing how to do that. So, um, as far as my beginnings, I've been writing for 14 years. So,
Oh, wow.
yes, about 6 months before I graduated from college, I realized that I was getting the wrong degree. And it was too late to like switch to anything English. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have to do like all of my graphic jobs and write whenever I can. So I got used to writing really late at night. You probably would do this too. You continue working
Yes.
and then you make time at night to write. And so I was one of those write until 2 a.m. people. And I've written, I want to say, I think I'm on my eighth book, but I might have already written it and I might be on my ninth book. So when Oceans Rise is actually my sixth book. I sold it second and I sold
Wow.
my second book first and it is coming out later. So the
You.
timing of publishing is really it's really quite interesting because sometimes you write a story and you think, well, it didn't get picked up by any publishers, it must not be good. But that's not often the truth. Sometimes it really is about the market because publishing is a business. And so if your book isn't in market right then, well, then they can't pick it up because it's not going to have sales. But that doesn't mean it's not good enough to get published later. And so that's what I found with one of my other series is that it fit much better now than it did when I wrote it.
I hear you on that, and I know you mentioned a little bit, Robin, as far as the theme of Ocean's Rise and everything. For everybody who didn't quite catch it the first time, How were you, what led you to coming up with the title Ocean When Oceans Rise? What led to the overall concept and just the overall story? Because from what I was reading on it, as far as the little bit on Amazon, it's definitely an interesting story when you have a woman going into alternate timelines, going into basically another, like I said, timeline, basically to confront a different individual who hasn't made mistakes or something like that.
Yeah, it's quite uh, there is a lot of time shifting. Okay, so it is a YA contemporary fantasy, and I like to say that it
Right.
comps as the butterfly effect meets the Little Mermaid with no mermaids. So that's
Mm,
what I like to tell people. So this girl, she is in an abusive relationship and she wants to escape, so she trades her voice to a sea witch so that she can have what well, she can have those decisions that she had made changed. But instead, when she gets to
right.
this new life that she thinks she's getting, this new version of her life, it's actually an alternate timeline. And she's traded place with
Mm,
someone who never made the same mistakes that she made, and the sea witch who saw power in her voice when she didn't, when she couldn't speak up against her own violence, uses her voice to unleash mythological creatures in the world. And so now, to save both worlds, she's got to get her voice back. And so there's a lot about, what we do in the face of violence that is being said, and a lot of that came from my own experiences being gaslit and in an abusive relationship when I was a teenager. And so the thing about
wow.
this story is that we like to think that teenagers don't do that kind of stuff to each other, but they do. And it should be said more and talked about more. And I wanted these warning signs to be seen by these teenagers so that maybe if they see what is happening to her, they go, okay, let's not do that. Let's not go there, and stop themselves before they get too far. It's so much easier said than done, but I think that exposure really helps prevent a lot.
No, I get what you're saying, Robin. So it's kind of like your book is kind of like a how-to in the fantasy world as far as how you can avoid an abusive
Yeah.
relationship during the stage based on what your overall experience was from your own personal experience. And that kind of actually segues into like my next question I was going to ask you as far as like where does that passion, where does that drive, that spark comes from as far as just writing in general? I know for me personally, I look at it from like a storytelling perspective, of course, and just giving people my own personal experience in ways that I can't say it within words, so
Mm.
I rather use the power of the pen to do so. Where does that spark come from yourself being an author of 8 books now
Yeah.
that you mentioned?
Yeah. So, I mean, there is always the love of storytelling and the drive to put out those unique ideas that come to mind. But there's also this feeling of needing to make sure that I can help people even if I can't meet every person. And
Right.
so what's so great about novel writing is that there are so many themes that are built off of an author's beliefs, and that doesn't mean that they're morals, but they're just these ideas that a person has collected their whole lives, based off of their own experiences. And so a lot can be gleaned from the human experience, and that's why you want to read widely so that you get all of these different ideas of what it's like in situations that you may never have to experience or would like to not
Mhm.
not to have to go through, um, or just to gain some empathy for people who do go through those things. And so I think there's just the need to make sure that I'm reaching out to people in a way that is more widespread than my own personal reach.
No, that's a great way to look at it. And that's kind of the same process I kind of went through writing my first book, What's Wealth Without Work. I wanted to explain to people, hey, without generational health, you can forget about generational wealth. And I kind of looked at it from the perspective as far as like, look at where we're at currently in South Texas, to where it's like a predominant diabetes type of population. Just because your family has like a history of diabetes doesn't mean you have to be the next one in line to do so, and you
Yes.
could break that generational curse. That's kind of that perspective I took when writing my own book. And when I hear you say that, as far as taking your overall experiences and just explaining, like I mentioned earlier, the how to and how not to.
Mm.
That's very, very important as far as just capturing the reader's attention and all that stuff. And it's incredible how you transformed it into your own fantasy novel and everything. So what made you want to go into that specific lane? I mean, I know it's what does it have like a to do with like your creative side, like from the graphic design, and then you all of a sudden turned it into an animation kind of thing?
Not really. I feel like the two things are separate, but I don't know. Like I've never thought about it like that before. Maybe the creative parts are all interconnected. I have no clue. I just love to read
Because that's what
fantasy.
I'm kind of getting.
Yeah. Well, I just love to
Yeah.
read fantasy. So I always think like you're going to write
Okay.
things that you read. Like you wouldn't write a self-help book and never read self-help books because you don't know what's out there and you don't know quite how it's done
Yeah.
and you want to make sure that it's kind of the same thing. Like you do it in whatever genre.
Yeah.
You I read widely as well just to have like palate cleansers.
Mm-hmm.
But I almost always go
Mm-hmm.
back to YA because I love the coming of age stories and I always go back to
Okay.
fantasy. And those are just things that I love in my heart. And so they come out naturally in my writing. And I always just think, how can we put a little bit of magic in the world? Because when you put magic in the world, you give
Mm.
someone a lens of hope that they may not feel in a situation that is so difficult as being gaslit or being in an abusive
Mm.
relationship. So you want to give them a lens of hope, and sometimes it takes that lens of magic in order to do it, so that they can see, yeah, that world doesn't really exist, but here's how to set something that seems impossible in reality. And so that she goes on this very emotional journey, and yes, there's magic, but ultimately true decisions get made through her heart. And so that's ultimately what changes her character as she
Mm.
grows throughout the book.
And I love how you mentioned those things exactly, Robin. And to add on to what you were saying, it's like hope is the foundation for a bright future, and that's what makes it actually so magical, because it's like you never know what's going to happen. As far as like within every magical spell, you don't know what's going to happen, but the anticipation of it happening, it makes you feel good. And like you
Yeah.
alluded to, Robin, it gives you that sense of hope. And kind of like how you're describing within the story, it's like the journey through the heart, and that's very, very important, because I feel like a lot of people lose track of going back to their heart, because that's really the source of where you'll find all your answers if you truly feel it out and you just close your eyes and witness yourself just sitting on your heart, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to ask you this, Robin, as far as from your take perspective, for all the aspiring writers who want to try to be in a position like maybe yourself or even myself, what would be your key pieces of advice you would tell someone who's looking to write that book or write that novel, but they don't know where to start, for instance?
I have two pieces of advice that I think when I look over my whole 14 years, these were the things that mattered most. Number one
Okay.
was don't be precious about your work. Okay, so many people get stuck on this
Mm,
first draft and they want it to be perfect and they're fixing and fixing and fixing as they go
right.
along and it takes forever. My first book took me 5 years to write and it is
Oh my
not
goodness.
good for the public. Like I love some very significant parts of it, but I wouldn't try to put it out there right now, even if the market came back around, because it's just not good.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of time wasted as I was learning. Writing is learning. Every time you write, you're going to get better. And so if you get precious about your work and you never move on to that next project, you're never going to really give yourself a chance to do something different and amazing and better. You also want to have a lot of options too, because you could write until your book is out of market and then you have to wait. So you want to keep writing no matter what. So that was my one big thing, because every book since that first book I've written between 20 and 30 days, every single one after that. So
Mm,
first one took me 5 years. The second one took me 22 days or 20 days. I can't remember. When Oceans Rise took me 30. Like it all happens faster, and every single one of them is better than the one before, because they don't get precious. I know that every draft I do can fix the things that I leave broken. So that's one of my things I wish I knew. one of the things I wish someone had said to me when I was wasting those 5 years. Of course, they're not wasted because I learned, but I could have gone a lot faster. And then the other thing,
It doesn't hurt to streamline the process.
yeah. And then the other thing that I learned this past year, just this past year, I did not. So when I got this deal with my publisher and their small pub, I got to be a part of these debut author groups. And so I got to meet all of these people from small
Okay.
publishing groups, medium, big, and we all share advice. We're all learning from each other because whether you're with a big pub or a small pub, we're all kind of doing the same stuff. We're just trying to get our book out there to readers. There's a lot of work to be done
Yeah.
by authors that even people who get big advances have to do still, or their book just isn't really put in places. So one of the things that was the most valuable for me, eye-opening for me, was how much I gained by networking. I used to think that networking was such a
Yes.
cheat. I was like, oh, look at these people cheating. It's not. Networking is so hard. You have to be willing to give to
Oh.
people without expecting anything and really mean it. You know what I mean? Like really dedicate yourself to
Mhm.
just to giving and serving that like publishing industry, and people are willing to
Mhm.
come back for you and help you and be around you um, and that always it doesn't hurt to ask people for stuff. That was something too that
Yes.
in me learning that networking was so significant, and how to network and what value I got out of it with these friendships and with these business relationships. I just also learned
Mhm.
that the worst someone can say is no. And then I will be in the exact same spot.
Exactly.
Yes, I will be in the exact same spot I was in. I'm not going to be less. I will just either move forward or I will stay here and I will ask again um, to someone else. So there really was no harm in saying no or getting a no, because like what did I have to lose? And so I said yes to so many things this past year that like I got my cover reveal done by Owl Crates and was on the news and hit that #1 release spot. All because I helped people and then said yes to as many things and favors that what came across my way. It was a year of yes for me, and it really made a life changing a life changing path for me.
No. No, and I love everything that you just said, Robin. And for everybody who's listening to the HFWB podcast series, if you're trying to write that book or novel, like Robin said, it's a learning process. Yes, you may mess up the first time you write it, but as long as you find ways to improve and get better, that's all that counts at the end of the day. And another thing I love that you said, Robin, that I agree wholeheartedly with, the power of networking. It's like it opens up so many doors that sometimes even a college degree can't even open up. You could
Yes.
basically be in a room with someone who can be like a high profile executive and you wouldn't even known it, all because of you just being a simple entrepreneur or a simple up and coming self published author just trying to get your book out there. Because I've gotten my book to some people to where it's like they've recommended it to other people and I didn't even realize it because of
Yeah.
that influence and that ability of networking and maintaining those relationships. And if anything, Robin, what you just described, you basically described seizing the moment and owning it every chance you get and making every second count. And I loved how you emphasized that message because it's very important. And for everybody who's also listening to the HFWB podcast series right now, also rewind everything that Robin just said because it was spot on and I loved every single second of it. But with that being said, Robin, we're at the point now where I'm basically going to ask you like a list of questions for everybody who comes onto my podcast, but of course I'll tweak it a little bit for yourself.
Okay.
My first question is my first question is simple, Robin. What's the first thing you do or think of every single day that you wake up?
Oh, I need coffee. Because I don't sleep that well.
Respect the honesty there.
No,
I love
I will
it.
definitely always be
Well,
honest. I don't sleep that well. I have a very active
mm,
brain. It just goes and goes and goes, and I have to tire it out with thoughts before my I will be allowed to fall asleep. And so usually when I wake up, I'm pretty tired. I've done some changes, like taking magnesium has really helped get me to fall asleep a little better and sleep more deeply so that I'm not so sleepy in the
Okay.
morning. But I do have a son that I take to kindergarten, so I have to get up and I've got to get him driven to school, so I have to be awake enough to do that. So my first thoughts are not usually writing related or significant. They're usually just, and then coffee comes around, and then I'm more brilliant and and as brilliant as I can possibly be. Coffee.
There's nothing wrong with that first sip of coffee to get your energy going to start off a morning. We've all been there. We're human. I
Yeah.
totally understand, Robin. I got you. My next question is actually this. When it comes to these two words, right? Health and wealth. What is your own personal definition of the two in your eyes?
Are you asking me if they're married or if they're individual ideas?
I'm asking actually, Robin, like, what is your personal definition when you think of the words health and wealth in your own
Okay.
eyes? First thing that
Um,
comes to mind.
so I am very mental health conscious, and I have created a lot of boundaries in my life. So when I think of health, I think of how am I doing in my headspace? Am I setting up
Mm,
boundaries for myself so that I can be the best version of me to everyone else? That's really important to me. I have turned down
I love
some pretty significant things recently because I wanted those boundaries to make sure that I was the best version. If I am not healthy in that way, I cannot write. I literally just threw away 23,000 words of a book because they were no good. And I could not figure out. I mean, they were individually in scenes, they were very cool, but it was not working out, and I had to throw them away. And part of that was because when I wrote a lot of it, I was not in a good health space. And then wealth for me, I think of wealth not in terms of money so much as richness in my life. Will this thing that I'm doing bring me value? Bring my family
Mm,
value? And I feel
that's
like
key
when
right
you've
there.
got stuff bringing value into your life, it will bring material wealth in the back end. It has to be rich.
Mm.
It has to bring value to you first. Otherwise, I ultimately think it's going to be something that devalues your life later.
Well said. I couldn't disagree with you even if I wanted to on that, Robin. That was so spot on. It's not even funny. I'm gonna switch it up actually.
Okay,
I'm actually gonna switch it up now, Robin, to a little bit of either or here just to
sure.
see which one you would choose, kind of pick your brain a little bit.
Okay.
What would you choose out of loyalty or respect?
Hmm. I mean, I feel like if you've got one, you really have the other. I tend to be a very
Mm-hmm.
loyal person. When I like someone,
Ooh.
and I feel like they have treated me well, I will fight for them and be there for them, uh,
Uh-huh.
and
Mm.
agree with them even if they're wrong and if it's harmless to other people. I will be like, yeah, they're totally wrong. Just because sometimes you need that kind of support, and I'm like that person. So I tend to be a loyal person. I do not like being disrespected. I I think though sometimes I wonder where it comes from first. So God, that's really hard. How would you answer that
No,
question?
and you're right, Robin. They kind of do go hand in hand. And to be honest, you're not the only person who's mentioned that who's come onto the podcast. So it's the truth, though. I mean, we all don't like being
Yeah.
disrespected, and I'm the type of person who is loyal to a fault, to where it's like, if you haven't done anything wrong to me, to where it's offended me or made me upset in any kind of way, I'll vouch for you and I'll say nothing but good things about you as long
Yeah.
as you don't cross my path in a negative way. That's
Yeah.
perfectly
Like
the way
don't
I
bring
look at it as
negativity
well.
in my
So,
life. Don't like let's not harm each other and then I don't see the problem.
peace and
Yeah.
love always. Here's the next one I want to throw at you. Would you rather live in space or live in the ocean?
That's a scary one because we actually know less about the ocean than we know about space right now. And I feel like there are some
That's
dark
true.
and scary things down there. because we just can't know.
Hmm.
Also, I really like sunlight, and I don't think that. I mean, I know that there's a, a void in space, but I feel like space might be my space.
I love that.
Yeah.
Space will be your space because
Yeah.
we ain't taking no chances underwater now.
No. Plus, we might meet some pretty cool aliens, so like it'll all work out.
I love it. I love it. I love the open mind there. Would you rather be famous and poor or anonymous and rich?
Famous and poor, or anonymous and rich? I think that this is a trick question because I think that a lot of authors end up being known for something and still very poor. So I think that I'm very much on the path of being known and still poor. Would I like to have money? Like, please buy my book. That would be awesome, guys. But I think you
Oh my
know that a
goodness.
lot of authors are well known and not very wealthy. So, yeah.
I love that. That's the most unique answer I think I've ever heard on my
Well,
podcast.
you
I
know,
promise you.
it's
But
pretty topical because I was on TikTok the other day and there's an author who was only paid $4,000 for her book with a big pub. And it was a runaway
oh wow,
bestseller, sold over 65,000 copies, made her publisher a lot of money, and she made no more money off of it. She only made the 4,000. So if
damn.
you want to talk about being so well known and being poor, you know, I mean,
I,
it's so
I
common.
love that. I love that example
Yeah.
actually. I don't know why, Robin, but I feel like you have a great taste in music just based off of our conversation, which leads to me asking you this. Would you rather dance to every song you hear or sing every song you hear?
Sing. Sing. I'm Filipino, so I don't know if you know this, but we have a little bit of a soft spot for karaoke. Um, as in
Mm,
almost all of us, no, no, not almost all of us, a lot of Filipinos have their own karaoke system and they are very high tech,
hmm.
like videoke. They're going to score you. You better get a 90 or better on that song, kind of deal. So the answer is always. It's always sing to that song. Although there are some fantastic Filipino dancers, we're really all together. We're just a very performer type people. So,
I love it.
yeah, there are some very talented. If you follow any of those kind of singers, dancers, they're fantastic. They really can do a lot. They're talented.
Either way, Robin, I just love how the fact that you're sticking to your roots, which is the most important thing because you never forgetting where you came from.
Yeah.
And to add on to the whole music theme, say for instance you're on an island, a deserted island, and you could listen to five artists, their whole entire catalog for the rest of your life, no matter the genre. Who would they be?
Oh, this is hard. You know, I don't actually know artists that well, so I tend to um I tend to not know a lot, but I can tell you, okay, indie wise, I would listen to Matt and Kim because the music is very happy. And so I think if you're stuck on an island,
Hmm.
you're going to need some happy jams. That music is very happy.
So
Um, Taylor
indie.
Swift, I know, okay, like don't, but Taylor Swift writes really story based songs and has been such an influence to a lot of people. I love her jams. I love them sad. I love them villain era. I love them everything. So she would be like another one. And then I can't tell you that I could name any other artist because even though I know artists, I don't love any of them more enough to name anyone. Like that's just I'm not great with music. I love listening.
You know what, Robin? You know what, Robin, for you, I think the two people you mentioned, based on your explanation, I think is good enough to get you by on a deserted island if you have to be there stranded. So
Yeah.
I think you can make it work. I really do believe that. And I don't know why. I feel like you also have a little bit of the traveling bug in you because you're literally, I feel like you're all over the place.
Yeah.
Is there a place, name a place where you traveled to that you enjoyed and name a place you would love to travel?
Hmm. I've been to Paris. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, wow.
I sometimes, though, wonder if I enjoyed Amsterdam just as much. Um, it just, and here's the thing: I was in Paris for like 9 days, so it's quite different from America. By the end of the trip, I knew that I would always want to live in America. Um, it just was so different. I know that sounds crazy, but it was just so different, and I knew that I wouldn't want to live in a European country. Um, and it's not like a America forever thing. It literally was just the way I felt. But Amsterdam felt a
Got you.
lot like that, like America. I felt a lot like the closest thing. So when we went on like a little day trip there, I was like, oh, it feels good to be here. And we didn't do much more than visit like Rembrandt's house and the Anne Frank house, but it was just so nice. And so I enjoyed
Okay.
both of those, and I really have trouble picking between either one. I would say the Philippines, except that I was only 5 when I visited. So that is a far and distant memory, and it's filled with more feelings of family than it is of places there. So it felt good, and I have those great memories, but I don't have like a sense of like where I would go and what I would see or what I did see when I was there. And if there was a place that I wanted
Right.
to visit, I think it would be Hawaii. I've always lived near beach towns. I think that Hawaii would be super cool to visit. So expensive though. And I think that I would enjoy that
No.
climate.
No, the fact that you've been to Paris and Amsterdam just says enough as far as your global background within itself, Robin. I mean, those are two places I would love to visit myself personally, and the fact that you've actually got to go through that experience. Hey, it's inspiring to me just to hear you talk about it and just to elaborate on it. It makes me want to even go there one day and be like, I've had people who told me about this experience. Now that I'm
Yeah.
experiencing it, now I see what they're talking about.
Well,
So
you
that's an
should.
inspiration within itself.
You should, because traveling
Yes,
opens
that's
your worldview. And even if you never write about those places, it will inspire you to just write in general. So you should. This week alone, I'm traveling to Denver, which is pretty cool. I think I've only visited once as a day trip as well. So it'll be exciting to stay for a little bit.
bottom line is you're not staying in one place and you're constantly on the move, shaking things up, and I love that. And I get this about our overall conversation, Robin. You're probably one of the busiest people ever. When you're not doing all the stuff that you're doing on a regular basis, and when you're not traveling, is there something that you want to tell the people that they may not know about you that you like to do, as far as hobbies and stuff?
Well, if they follow my TikTok, they will know this. But I love watching K dramas. I really do. I love to
Okay.
swoon over those actors, even if I have to read all of their words on the screen. Watching those inspires me to write romantic scenes, and so I will just like eat that stuff up. Sometimes I'll say that I need to like watch this for research, and it's really just because I enjoy them so much because they're so good at creating these dynamic moments between characters, and they do these great hit and misses, like, oh no, we couldn't be together at this time for this reason. um and I don't know, I just love it. So I would watch those. I wish I could watch them more. I have not seen as many as my heart wants to see because I'm so busy, but I wish I could watch those more.
I love it. I love it. Last question for you, Robin, before we wrap everything, of course. If you had the opportunity, right, to go back in time and talk to yourself, say, 10 years ago, what would you tell yourself? And at the same time, Robin, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
10 years ago, I would probably tell myself to think more. I would probably tell myself to wait a little longer when deciding on what agent to go with. Because I had a literary agent. Ultimately, it didn't work out. She's a super nice person. But there are things about that relationship, that business relationship, that I will never understand. And and it felt like like it wasted so much of my time. And so I wish that I had just,
Mm.
instead of saying yes to this person who wanted me, just waited, just held off a little bit. Um, because things might have gone a little faster for me had I done that. And maybe after that, if I had told myself to not take that break and just keep writing. But there was this moment where I just took like a couple years off because I just couldn't. And and that though was a lot for my mental health. I think ultimately I grew a lot during that time, but I sometimes I think about the time and how long it takes to get into publishing. And so if I'm looking at 10 years into the future, what I'm hoping for is to continue writing, perhaps at I'm talking to agents right now. So I'm moving back into that kind of a
Good stuff,
relationship.
y'all.
What's that?
I was saying we're getting an exclusive here on the HFWB
Yeah.
podcast
So
series.
so I'm
Robin is
trying
talking
now.
to agents.
Like I said, publishing is so unpredictable. So it could all not work out. And that's fine too. And so I think no matter what, there's going to be books coming out, whether it comes out through small pubs or indie pubs, whether I put it out myself as an indie author or I go big pub is up to the universe. um, and I have some plans for bigger things, but I can't talk about them yet. So for right
No,
now, I think that all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna look at the next 10 years and say yes to all the things that feel right, and no to anything that doesn't, because I've established within myself that I have boundaries. And so some people may not understand the choices I make, but they're all gonna be for the sake of, does this feel right and good, and they're all gonna be right for me.
and it all starts from the heart at the end of the day, and that's basically how you summarized it,
Yeah.
Robin. I love it. For, and for anybody who wants to get in contact with you, who wants to follow you on social media, know where to get your book, Where Oceans Rise, let the people know, Robin, this is your time to shine.
All right. So I love TikTok. It is my favorite social media. I love it. I was on TikTok before I got any book deals. So that is like the place where I make all my content and everything gets repurposed out from that. If that ship goes
Gotcha.
down and people cannot find me there, I want them to go to my website because I have all my book information there, and they can continue to get updates on me if they sign up for my newsletter. So those are my spots.
All right, and we will. And everybody listening to the HFWB podcast series, you heard it here first. Get in contact with Robin on TikTok, and make sure you go buy her book When Oceans Rise, and it's coming out what, May
Third,
23rd,
yes.
if I saw that correctly.
May 23rd,
Yes,
2023.
May 23rd. I'm not. Yes, May 23rd, 2023. It's literally everywhere all over the internet. You can literally Google it and it'll come up on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I even
Target.
saw it on Target. I'm like, wow. It's like, where can't you find this book? And it's like, you're in the process, Robin, are making a wonderful impact, and I just want to let you know, between me and you, I salute you for what you're doing, and I appreciate you as well, Robin, for just making time out of your busy schedule to simply bless us with an appearance on the HFWB podcast series. It is all love always, Robin.
Thank you so much. I really appreciated this, and this was fun. You're a great host.
No, I appreciate you as well, Robin. And for everybody who's listening to the HFWB podcast series, this is your host, Clifton Pope. I encourage everybody to stay healthy, wealthy, and blessed. And until next time, peace and love.